setting my timer, so I'm good to go. I do everything with the timer because it allows me to have constraints and allows me to uh, make sure that I am reducing the chances of Parkinson's law, where I any task will take up the time that is allotted to it. And so if I dedicate this task to having a specific time, I'm going to get it done. So today what I want to talk to you guys about is why personal development, why entrepreneurship is the best form of personal development that is out there. And I'm going to start this off with a story because it helps me illustrate the concepts that I'm trying to share. I got to a point inside of my business journey where I felt stuck. And when I felt stuck, it wasn't just stuck in business, I was stuck in other areas of my life as well. I was stuck inside of my relationships, I was stuck inside of my health, I was stuck inside of my wealth, obviously my business, and I was also stuck in my headspace. And I believe that because of entrepreneurship, because of being a business owner, because of having the ability and the consciousness to work on myself, is how I was able to take care of my mental health. And I was able to put myself in a state where I had improved my mental health. So when I was building my gyms, I got to a point where growth was pretty steady. I wasn't really required in the gyms. And I had managers, I had salespeople, and all I was really doing was just launching new studios and making sure that everything was just running properly. And it got to a point where, because the business side was so stable, I started creating instability in other areas of my life. And I had this realization many years afterwards, is that I thrive in chaos. I used to thrive in chaos. Let me change the words that I use. I used to thrive in chaos. And what that means is, growing up, I grew up in a very turbulent home, right? I grew up because I had to walk on eggshells because I didn't know how my father would react. I didn't know what was it going to be, a good day, was it going to be a bad day, and what mood my father was going to be into. And a lot of the time it was because poor man came here as an immigrant, had to work his butt off, provide for a family of five, and do a job that he hated, and he only did that to make sure that he provided. And he gave us an incredible life, he gave me an incredible work ethic, but the mindset that he had leading into it, it was a very turbulent home. It was about high achievement, right? You had to do above the bar. There were standards that were set not only by yourself but by others, so you had to surpass those standards. So good enough was never good enough. You had to be even better. And then the stress that he had, and he did not have the ability to process those stressors, and so he took it out on us. And so my family life was very turbulent. My growing up, it was a very chaotic life, and I grew up to thrive in that life. Like, it is pressure, it is chaos, and that's why I dove headfirst into wanting to build a business. Because when you're first starting a business, when you're an entrepreneur, it's overwhelming. You have to learn so many different skills. You have to change your character traits. You have to develop different beliefs that you have. Change your beliefs around money, change your beliefs around people, change your beliefs about how you view the world. So that way you can look at reality for reality and what it is, rather than trying to subject yourself for your emotions and letting yourself think of something that exists that doesn't really exist. And so business, like I said, is the perfect form of personal development because it allows you to become the most conscious self that you can be, because business is just a numbers game, and numbers have no emotions. It's inputs and outputs. It's data. You look at data and you make decisions. And so when you start a business, right, before you can get to a point where you can look at data and make decisions, when you start a business, there's a bunch of skills that you're learning. You're overwhelmed. You don't know what you're doing. You're a little all over the place, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Those are the moments where I thrived. I loved it. When I was starting my gyms, when I was working full day, all day long, I was doing $200 a day, I was setting appointments, I was doing the sales, I was building the gyms. That is when I thrived. And the reason I thrived is because I didn't have the space or the time to be able to manage my emotions. I didn't have the time or the space or the attention to be able to do the inner child work that I needed to do. I didn't have the time or the space or the attention to be able to regulate my physiology to go, hey, I'm going to take care of my mental health, right? And so when I got to a point inside of my businesses where I had the time, I had the space, I didn't do that, right? So business is stable. What ended up happening is there's other areas in your life, right? There's three areas in your life. There's health, wealth, and relationships. And so health was pretty stable for me. Health has always been a little bit stable for me because I've been into health. I love working out. It's something that I can do very easily, and that stayed pretty consistent. Money, wealth became super consistent as well. And so relationships, right? When people that I was dating, I started dating a lot of toxic people. I got into relationships that did not serve me. I wasn't thinking consciously. I wasn't looking for what it was that I needed, and I felt stuck. And because of that, I couldn't show up in the business the way that I wanted to. I was emotionally reactive. My team members saw it. And I honestly, looking back at this, I feel horrible. I feel like I let those people down. And I set a bad example of what a good leader should be. And it was a good learning experience, but I feel like by association, people can see the good in you for a very long time. And once they see something bad, or once they see emotionally reactive, or once they see you break down, their image of you changes forever. And your reputation, you just get one reputation, right? And over time, I have learned that I am trying to improve my reputation. I am trying to show up as the best version of myself consistently, and consistently being a regulated human being at all times, right? And so because of that reason, my relationships were in turmoil. And so my health was stable, my business was stable. I found chaos inside of my relationships. And because I found the chaos, I didn't have the time to even think about my business. I couldn't proceed or progress forward. And that's where I realized that I needed to take a step back, and I needed to start doing the work that is required to help me progress forward. Because I was never going to grow inside of my business, because I needed to do the work that was required, which was developing new skill sets, right? I needed to become less emotionally reactive, and I needed to look at the data to regulate my emotions. The second thing that I had to do, I had to change a lot of my beliefs, right? My belief was that I am not good enough. And that was a consistent belief that I had. I have a very specific memory where that belief is imprinted in me. And I've done a lot of work to reframe that memory and use that information for my own good. And then the last thing was the character traits that I had to develop was not being emotionally reactive and being able to look at data. So that was the being more patient, being more conscious, being more grounded was a character trait that I needed to develop, right? Because the skill I needed to develop was looking at data to regulate my emotions. And so all of those things I came to realize because I took the time to go inward, right? Because I knew that externally my life was a mess. And so whenever I found that externally when life is a mess, I went inward. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the work that I did. It wasn't for the work where I sat back, and a lot of the times it was sitting back and having an emotion come up, having anxiety come up, having stressors come up, and not reacting, but instead sitting back, opening up a journal, and going, why do you feel this way? Having a conversation with myself. And for, I would say, a year, a lot of it was just having conversations with my inner child. A lot of it was just having conversations with my inner child, letting him know, hey, you're safe, everything's good, we got your back, and learning these different skills to be able to sit with my emotions, process my emotions, learning that I am not my emotions. And so looking back at my journey, personal development is extremely essential, whether you want to up for yourself, you want to show up for your business, you want to show up for your relationships, you want to show up for your health, right? I think the conduit, right? Personal development is this big nebulous idea of I want to develop myself personally. I want to improve who I am as a human being. Oops, just got disconnected. So make sure we start up again to make sure that we can control the camera. And so, like I said, personal development is a very big nebulous idea. And you need a conduit for that idea. You need a vehicle to practice personal development on. And in my opinion, the best vehicle that you can use, the two best vehicles, I mean, there's three best vehicles that you can use to practice personal development. And I don't like personal development because I like self-mastery. And the reason I like the word self-mastery, it's because if you can master dominion over yourself, you have achieved the highest form of what I would say achievement a person can have, because that's what most religions are, right? Most religions, especially Islam and Buddhism and majority of other religions and doctrines, are all about just you overcoming your animalistic instincts, right? Deep down, we are animals. We are. I mean, we're all animals, right? And so we have a limbic system and a prefrontal cortex, and our limbic system is what drives majority of our survival needs. And unless you cultivate your prefrontal cortex, your consciousness, to be able to make decisions from a grounded state, you will always live and be like an animal. And so I've come to realize that having self mastery and having personal development as this big nebulous thing, and if we were to simplify what that is, it simply just comes back to you being able to control your animalistic instincts and you being able to show up as your best self. And that's why I believe in self mastery more than personal development, because you can be personally developed, you can read all these books, you can meditate, you can do all this, but until you actually cultivate the ability to master yourself, master your emotions, master your health, master your state, literally mastery, and mastery can never be achieved. So it's a infinite cycle that you're always achieving. Once you can do that, you need a vehicle, or if you want to do that, you need a vehicle. Well, what are the vehicles? You do it through your relationships, you do it through health, or you do it through business, right? For me, it started with health and it progressed forward. So there's different seasons of life, right? I have a pre-season theory where there's different seasons in your life, and you can, before the season starts, let's say having children, you need to prepare for that season, which is preseason, right? Like football, we used to have preseason games and then season games. And so in the season, in the preseason games, we used to prepare for the season. And that's exactly what life throws at us, right? So a lot of my time was health was where I started. Health was kind of the preseason for me before entrepreneurship. Like focusing on my health, getting consistent, understanding what hard work looks like, understanding time under tension, putting in actual like working sets, understanding progressive overload, understanding how to log book and track data and stuff like that. Well, that was a great precursor for entrepreneurship, right? And that was the preseason for entrepreneurship. But the health aspect of things I never struggled with, right? So it's something that came naturally to me. So there wasn't a lot of personal development that was needed here, right? Because I didn't have a lot of limiting beliefs around health. It was simply just the only limiting belief around health was, oh, I am a hard gainer. And that was false, because there's no such thing as a hard gainer. It's just energy expenditure. And once I got over that belief, which was I just got to eat more and train harder, that solved that problem. I put on like 20 pounds in 12 weeks, right? It wasn't really hard. And once I got into business, that's when I realized that personal development, self mastery was required. That became my vehicle, because if I wanted to achieve self mastery, I can do that in this container of business, right? Because if you read books and you have all of these different things that you're trying to do for self mastery, but you don't have a vehicle or a conduit or something that you can put into application, right? Let's say you're trying to manage your emotions, but you have nothing to practice managing your emotions. Well, you're not going to develop that skill set, right? But if you're learning to manage your emotions and now you have to manage your emotions in your relationship, well, that's work that you got to, that's practice, right? If you're trying to manage your emotions and you have to manage your emotions because you're not losing weight, right? In your health, well, that's practice, right? If you want to manage your emotions and inside of your business, let's say an employee is doing something, or maybe you're at a point where you are not getting the results that you want, or you're not getting the clients that you want, or you're not making the money that you want to make. Well, you got to regulate your emotions and be able to show up as your best self and tell yourself, why is this actually happening? And so self-mastery is great, but you need to have a conduit that you can practice it on. And the three conduits, the best three conduits are health, wealth, and relationships, right? And wealth, in my opinion, can happen for a lot of people that work a 9 to 5, that choose to not live a life against the grain because they're conditioned by society to go to school, have a 9 to 5, trade 5 out of their 7 days to living a life that they hate, is the fact that they can do it when they're investing their money. But I don't think that really requires a lot of emotional regulation, right? Because people just throw stuff in their 401k or at the S&P 500 and hope it'll grow. But when you're an entrepreneur, I think that is like wealth, in my definition, is actually owning something, building something, having assets. And that's my definition of wealth. I think that actually forces you to have the best conduit. I think entrepreneurship is the best conduit for self-mastery. That is my belief, that is the world, that is my reality, and I believe this through and through. I think health has a limit to how much self-mastery you can develop. I think relationships have a limit to how much self-mastery you can develop. I think entrepreneurship is the continuous, because entrepreneurship is a game that is absolutely continuous. It is a game that never ends because you can't win at business. The person who wins is the one who can play the longest. The person who survives, who can play the game for a long period of time. It is a time horizon game. And so is self-mastery. And so if you take one time horizon game and you put another time horizon game, now somebody can argue health is a time horizon game. Absolutely it is. But in my opinion, when you reach a pinnacle of health where you are healthy, where you are lean, where you are improving your health, but after a certain point, it becomes very incremental, right? It becomes very, very, very minute. After a point, it just becomes hygiene, right? It's just like showering. It's just like brushing your teeth. That's what health becomes. But entrepreneurship, there's always a new level. There's always a new skill to learn. And so there's a consistent conduit for self-mastery. So that is why I believe, and I think, and I truly believe this deep down in my soul, that entrepreneurship is the best form of personal development. And no matter who you are or what you say, yes, can you take the actions, right? Because somebody is going to come to me and say, well, I don't have to achieve self-mastery to be successful at business. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. But somehow, some way, being a human being, things are going to come up that are going to hold you back. Because all of these limiting beliefs, the skills that you need to develop, the character traits that you have are going to seep in what you do. Because for me, trust me, I've been here. I blocked a lot of this out because I was just gung-ho on, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make the money that I need to make. I'm just going to take the actions, right? What is it? I'm going to generate leads. I'm going to make sales. I'm going to build incredible products and have an incredible service, and I'm going to retain my customers, right? I wholeheartedly believe that. You're going to get to a certain point where you got to face these demons. You have to. There's no other way. Because if you don't, well, you're not going to be able to grow. So there's only a certain degree of pushing things under the rug. And mind you, let's say in entrepreneurship, you're able to compartmentalize. You're able to push things under the rug because you're like, you know what, when I work on my business, I don't need any of these distractions. Cool. Well, it's going to show up in your relationships. It's going to show up in your health. And so if you're going to deal with it, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you're going to deal with it, you might as well deal with it. And the best form of dealing with it is through entrepreneurship. And so looking back at my life, I've realized that if you don't deal with the shift that is going on within your ears, you can't actually create the reality in the world that you want. It's just as simple as that, because there's going to be character traits that hold you back, right? Maybe you're an emotionally reactive person, and you need, in order for you to get to where you want to go, like we talked about identity, right? You're an emotionally like for me, I'll use my example. I was an emotionally reactive individual. I had to learn the skill set, this identity that I had to learn the characteristics of being patient, being able to observe my thoughts and emotions. That's a skill and a character trait that I had to learn. Being conscious, right? And so, well, in order to get there, I had to do the work, right? Because I knew that it was going to directly, proportionally lead me to building a better business, having better health, and having better relationships. So that is why I think personal development, self-mastery is crucial for your success, whatever you're looking for, whether it's success in relationships, whether it's success in your health, whether it's success inside of your business. And sooner or later, you're going to have to face that reality and deal with the shit that's going on. Because if you don't deal with the shit, it's going to catch up to you, right? You're going to be like chin deep in your shit, and you have to deal with before you can actually move on. And until you deal with it, you can never move on, because eventually there will be a tipping point. There will be a tipping point where you can't shove shit under the rug, and what you've been shoving under the rug is so big that it shows up you either like something happens inside of your business, something happens inside of your relationship, something happens inside of your health. It's just a common theme over and over and over again. Right now, I'm doing these improv, and so if I had to sit down and write this into a proper article or something, I would find evidence to support my thesis and my hypothesis that I have. But I can say for certain it is something that I believe and something that I hold true, because it is something that I've experienced. And it may not be for you, but it is for me. So I hope that provided you guys with value. If it did, awesome. If it didn't, awesome. I hope you have an incredible day. See you guys later.